Good evening, my name is Damien, the tall, friendly atheist dad, and host of the Tall, Friendly Atheist Dad podcast. Welcome to part 7 of An Atheist Reads The People of the Abyss by Jack London.
So far from lies and hypocrisy, returns to energy, and silence becomes brave. Don't ask me the reason why. Just say I only dream in black and white. Future's nothingness, but I can choose another end. Opening my eyes, and you beginning in my life. Without emptiness to feel, I am sure of myself. No mercy until the end.
Evening, yes, and welcome to the Tall, Friendly Atheist Dad podcast for Monday, the 18th of October. Wherever you are in the world, whatever time of day it is, whatever you happen to be doing, and if you know about this channel already, excellent. If this is your first time watching or listening, I hope you enjoy. If you jump onto the YouTube channel for the Tall, Friendly Atheist Dad podcast, you'll find about a dozen books that I'm reading, all in various stages of procrastination. The only one I have finished successfully is, Letter to a Christian Nation by Sam Harris. I have also done, Kent Hovind's PhD thesis, which is a Patreon-only special. So if you have a look at the show notes, you'll see a link that says Give Me Money here, and that will give you a link to Patreon, where for as little as $5 a month, you can support what I do in producing and distributing thought-provoking content and atheism from an intellectual standpoint. So, with all that out of the way, this is part 7, and we're going to be reading chapter 7 of the book, The People of the Abyss by Jack London. Now, to me, it is a very interesting book. This is actually the third time that I've read it. It is very interesting because it gives you a glimpse into life only. Sorry, I keep punching my microphone. It's a bad habit. It gives you a glimpse into life only 120 years ago, and I think that kind of historical perspective is underappreciated in these modern societies. So, if you can think, if you went to London 120 years ago, what would you find? You would find abject poverty, government indifference, and basically a devaluing of human life over, so basically people treated property better than they did human life. And it's quite interesting. So this chapter is so I'm going to be reading chapter 7. Chapter 8. Chapter 8, which is called The Carter and the Carpenter. So let me then get... the reason for the coughing in the background is actually cause for excitement as well, because both me and my son have tested negative for COVID-19. So, man, that was such a relief. So, as I say, the other day, we got the phone call that my son's school had a positive case, and so that meant because I spent a lot of time with my son, I might as well get tested as well. So, so if you do happen to have the book, The People of the Abyss, you can download it for free from some various websites, or you can purchase it like I have. So anyway, so I'm going to, this chapter is fairly long. Excellent. I love these slightly long chapters. But anyway, so if you are reading along, or if you want to participate and actually, jump into the show, I'm more than happy to have comments. I'm more than happy to have people actually come along and read with me. I know sometimes the time differences don't help. But yeah, that's what I cover up. And while I do that, I'm going to put some tunes on. So this music is from Victim of Illusion from their album Invisible Light. Head on over to victimofillusion.bandcamp.com and you can purchase the album for a handful of euros and support independent artists. So anyway, so this is chapter 8, The Carter and the Carpenter. So 3, 2, 1. The Carter, with his clean-cut face, chin beard, and shaved upper lip, I should have taken in the United States for anything from a master workman to a well-to-do farmer. The carpenter, well, I should have taken him for a carpenter. He looked it, lean and wiry, with shrewd, observant eyes, and hands that had grown twisted to the handles of tools through 47 years' work at the trade. The chief difficulty with these men was that they were old and that their children, instead of growing up to take care of them, had died. Their years had told on them, and they had been forced out of the whirl of industry by the younger and stronger competitors who had taken their place. These two men, turned away from the casual ward of the Whitechapel Workhouse, were bound with me for Poplar Workhouse. Not much of a show, they thought, but to chance it was all that remained to us. It was Poplar, or the streets and night. Both men were anxious for a bed, for they were about gone, as they phrased it. The Carter, 58 years of age, had spent the last 3 nights without shelter or sleep, while the carpenter, 65 years of age, had been out 5 nights. But, oh dear, soft people, full of meat and blood, with white beds and airy rooms waiting for you each night, how can I make you know what it is to suffer as you would suffer if you spent a weary night on London streets? Believe me, you would think 1,000 centuries had come and gone before the east paled into dawn. You would shiver till you were ready to cry aloud with the pain of each aching muscle, and you would marvel that you could endure so much and live. Should you rest upon a bench or your tired eyes close, depend upon it the policeman would rouse you and gruffly order you to move on. You may rest upon the bench, and benches are few and far between, but if your rest means sleep, on you must go, dragging your tired body through the endless streets. Should you, in desperate slyness, seek some forlorn alley or dark passageway and lie down, the omnipresent policeman will rout you out just the same. It is his business to rout you out. It is a law of the powers that be that you shall be routed out. But when the dawn came, the nightmare over, you would hail you home to refresh yourself, and until you died, you would tell the story of your adventure to groups of admiring friends. It would grow into a mighty story. Your little 8-hour night would become an odyssey, and you a Homer. Not so with these homeless ones who walked to Poplar Workhouse with me. And there are 35,000 of them, men and women, in London town this night. Please don't remember as you go to bed. If you are as soft as you ought to be, you may not rest so well as usual. But for old men of 60, 70 and 80, ill-fed, with neither meat nor blood, to greet the dawn unrefreshed, and to stagger through the day in mad search for crusts, with a relentless night rushing down upon them again, and to do this 5 nights and days? Oh dear soft people, full of meat and blood, how can you understand? Alright, so that's a pretty hard word. So basically what he's saying, yeah, so one person in his crew has gone 3 nights without getting a proper rest, and the other one's gone 5. And I think, this kind of points to the abject cruelty of the powers that be, that they would just basically fling these people out on the streets and expect them to fend for themselves. And look, it may be a thing about Western society as well. In that way, I would like to think that we are a little bit more charitable in terms of that. But remember, this was 1900s. So the available money in the public purse in order to help the homeless wasn't there. I think maybe the awareness wasn't quite there either. There were. So I'm just gonna. So there were different factors that caused this kind of homelessness, this kind of this poverty, and where it said that younger and stronger competitors who had taken their places. So I'm going to close this window. So this is the thing. If this is the intended retirement plan that the British government had in mind, it's a pretty crappy one. I'll tell you that much. And I kind of feel this personally. Now, I'm not saying I've been homeless, but I do know for people who work night shift. I know people who work night shift, and it can, if you don't look after yourself properly, it can take a toll. But these people are doing night shift. Well, night shift in that they can't sleep, they can't rest, because it is the job of the policeman to find those people who rest and then move them along, kick them out, make life hard for them. So here's a literal line here. But when the dawn came, the nightmare over, you would hail you home to refresh yourself. Until you died, you would tell the story of your adventure to groups of admiring friends. It will grow into a mighty story. Your little 8-hour night would become an odyssey, and you a Homer. So, for us who live these comfortable Western lives, we do a night out on the street and it's like, oh, hey, look, I had an adventure. But for these people who are living it, it's not an adventure. So let's continue on to the next page. So 3, 2, 1. I walked up Mile End Road between the carter and the carpenter. Mile End Road is a wide thoroughfare cutting the heart of East London. And there were tens of thousands of people abroad on it. I tell you this so that you may fully appreciate what I describe in the next paragraph. As I say, we walked along, and when they grew bitter and cursed the land, I cursed with them, cursed as an American waif would curse, stranded in a strange and terrible land. And as I tried to lead them to believe, and succeeded in making them believe, they took me for a seafaring man who had spent his money in riotous living, lost his clothes, no unusual occurrence of seafaring men ashore, and was temporarily broke while looking for a ship. This accounted for my ignorance of English ways in general and casual wards in particular, and my curiosity concerning the same. The carter was hard put to keep the pace at which we walked. He told me that he had eaten nothing that day, but the carpenter, lean and hungry, his grey and ragged overcoat flapping mournfully in the breeze, swung on in a long and tireless stride which reminded me strongly of the plains wolf or coyote. Both kept their eyes upon the pavement as they walked and talked, and every now and then the other one would stoop and pick something up, never missing the stride the while. I thought it was cigar and cigarette stumps they were collecting, and for some time took no notice. Then I did notice. From the slimy, spittle-drenched sidewalk, they were picking up bits of orange peel, apple skin, and grape stems, and they were eating them. The pits of greenish plums they cracked between their teeth for the kernels inside. They picked up the stray bits of bread, the size of peas, apple cores so black and dirty one would not take them to be apple cores. And these things these two men took into their mouths, and chewed them, and swallowed this. And this, between 6 and 7 o'clock in the evening of August the 20th, year of our Lord 1902, in the heart of the greatest, wealthiest, and most powerful empire the world has ever seen. These two men talked. They were not fools, they were merely old. And naturally, their guts are reek with pavement offal. They talked of bloody revolution. They talked as anarchists, fanatics, and madmen would talk. And who shall blame them? In spite of my 3 good meals that day, and the snug bed I could occupy if I wished, and my social philosophy and my evolutionary belief in the slow development and metamorphosis of things, in spite of all this, I say, I felt impelled to talk rot with them or hold my tongue. Poor fools! Not of their sort are revolutions bred. And when they are dead and dust, which they will be shortly, other fools will talk bloody revolution, as they gather offal from the spittle-drenched sidewalk along Mile End Road to Poplar Workhouse. Being a foreigner and a young man, the carter and the carpenter explained things to me and advised me. Their advice, by the way, was brief and to the point. It was to get out of the country. As fast as God will let me, I assured them. I'll hit only the high places till he won't be able to see my trail for smoke. They felt the force of my figures rather than understood them, and they nodded their heads approvingly. Okay, so that's the next page. Okay, segues very nicely. Yeah, it is interesting. Now, one thing I have noticed when watching historical dramas from the 1900s, and I'm probably thinking Peaky Blinders here in particular, but there are other historical dramas from around this time period. One of the tropes of those shows is usually there's a subplot about communists or fascists or that kind of revolutionary thinking. And actually, while I'm here, I'm just going to quickly do this. Oh, there we go. That. So I'm just going to tighten this up. Okay, cool. That's tightened up. Yeah, and this is the thing. Back in those times, it will be very common for bosses to overwork their employees, because there wasn't the protection that we have nowadays in this economy. So yeah, it was. Now, I won't say I've studied it, but I would like to think I'm familiar with the origins of the 8-hour. Well, not say origins, but the cause of the 8-hour movement. We get 8 hours work, 8 hours rest, 8 hours play, that kind of stuff. And yeah, I think the 8 hours movement. Now, I know that unionism is a bit of a dirty word at the moment, but I actually think this is probably going against my conservative leanings here. But I think the union movement are a very important piece in the trade union, in the employment space. Because even though I'm not a union member myself, I have been the beneficiary of what the union movement has achieved. And yeah, so I think over history, you've always had this antagonistic force between the union looking after the employees, and you've had the businesses looking after the employers. And I think it's good that there has been that antagonism. I'm not saying what we have is perfect, but I think what we do have is pretty good. And so this so if you can imagine being so hungry that you look for rotten apple cores, you look for grape stems, and you look for dried orange peel and apple skin on the ground. remember, the footpaths in England aren't anywhere near as clean as what we'd have in Australia or something. And so, yeah, I can just imagine how cruel and how tough it would have been to be in Victorian era England as an unemployed person. Like, as an unemployed person in Australia, life is tough. But back then, you can only imagine social welfare wasn't really, there was no pension, there was no there's no Centrelink or anything like that. And yeah, so I can just imagine why they said, what's your advice? Get out of the country as far get out of the country as fast as God will let me. That's interesting. Anyway, I'm going to put the music back on, and we'll get into the next page. Okay. Actually, make a man criminal against his will, said the carpenter. Here I am, old, younger men taking my place, my clothes getting shabbier and shabbier, and making it harder every day to get a job. I go to the casual ward for a bed. Must be there by 2 or 3 in the afternoon, or I won't get in. You saw what happened today. What chance does that give me to look for work? Suppose I do get in the casual ward. Keep me in all day tomorrow. Let me out morning the next day. What then? The law says I can't get in another casual ward that night less than 10 miles distant. Have to hurry and walk to be there in time that day. What chance does that give me to look for a job? Suppose I don't walk. Suppose I look for a job. In no time there's night come and no bed. No sleep all night, nothing to eat. What shape am I in the morning to look for work? Got to make up my sleep in the park somehow. The vision of Christchurch, Spitalfield, was strong on me. And get something to eat. And there I am, all down and no chance to get up. Used to be a toll gate here, said the carter. Many's the time I've paid my toll here in my carting days. I've had 3 penny rolls in 2 days, the carpenter announced, after a long pause in the conversation. 2 of them I ate yesterday, and the 3rd today, he concluded, after another long pause. I ain't nothing today, said the carter, and I'm fagged out. My legs is hurting me something fearful. The roll you get in the spike is that hard you can't eat it nicely with less than a pint of water, said the carpenter, for my benefit. And on asking him what the spike was, he answered, the casual ward. It's a cant word, But what surprised me was that he should have the word can't in his vocabulary. A vocabulary that I found was no mean one before we parted. I asked them what I might expect in the way of treatment if we succeeded in getting into the Poplar workhouse, and between them I was supplied with much information. Having taken a cold bath on entering, I will be given for supper 6 ounces of bread and 3 parts of skilly. 3 parts means 3/4 of a pint, and skilly is a fluid concoction of 3 quarts oatmeal stirred into 3 buckets and a half of hot water. Milk and sugar, I suppose, and a silver spoon? No fear, salt's what you'll get, and I've seen some places where you don't get any spoon. Hold her up and let her run down, that's how they do it. You do get good skilly at acne, said the carpenter. Oh, wonderful skilly that, praised the carpenter, and each eloquently looked at the other. Flour and water at St. George's in the east, said the carter. The carpenter nodded. He had tried them all. Then what? I demanded. I was informed that I was sent directly to bed. Call you at 5:30 in the morning and get up and take a sluice, if there's any soap. Then breakfast, same as supper, 3 parts of skilly and 6-ounce loaf. 'Tisn't always 6 ounces, corrected the carter. 'Tisn't, no, and often that sour you can hardly eat it. When first I started I couldn't eat the skilly nor the bread. Now I can eat me own and another man's portion. I could eat 3 other men's portions, said the carter. I haven't had a bit this blessed day. Then what? Then you've got to do your task. Pick 4 pounds of oakum, or clean and scrub, or break 10 to 11 hundredweight of stones. I don't have to break stones and past 60, you'll see. They'll make you do it though, you're young and strong. What I don't like, grumbled the carter, is to be locked up in a cell to pick oakum. It's too much like prison. But suppose, after you had your night's sleep, you refuse to pick oakum or break stones, or do any work at all? I asked. No fear, you'll refuse a second time, they'll run you in, advised the carpenter. Wouldn't advise you to try it on, my lad. Then comes dinner, he went on. 8 ounces of bread, 1.5 ounces of cheese and cold water. Then you finish your task and have supper, same as before. 3 parts of skilly and 6 ounces of bread. Then to bed 6 o'clock the next morning you turn loose, provided you finished your task. We had long since left Mile End Road, and after traversing a gloomy maze of narrow winding streets, we came to Poplar Workhouse. On a low stone wall we spread our handkerchiefs, and each in his handkerchief put all his worldly possessions, with the exception of the bit of baccy down his sock. And then, as the last light was fading from the drab-coloured sky, the wind blowing cheerless and cold, we stood with our pitiful little bundles in our hands, a forlorn group at the workhouse door. Alright, so this is... Okay, so still got a few pages to go. So what this is describing is... So as I say, so what is describing firstly... So when you get in, so you're basically in the workhouse for basically a day and a half. So you get in in the evening, you get some food, you get some food, you go to bed, wake up, have your shower, if there's any soap left, you get a bit of breakfast, and then you basically work the whole day. You work the whole day, you get a little bit of supper, you get another rest, and then you get turfed out, basically. So, oh, bless you. How was I say? So in this paragraph where he talks about the law says I can't get into another casual ward that night less than 10 miles distant. So it seems like even the law was against these people who were already doing it tough. So what the recollection here is that once you've worked in one casual ward, you can't go to another casual ward that is less than 10 miles within the same casual ward that you're in. Now, 10 miles is 16 kilometers. So once you get out in the morning, what you're supposed to do is, rest, get some food, get some sleep, freshen yourself up, and then presumably walk or travel the 16 kilometers to the next workhouse to do the same thing all over again. And bear in mind, they're not paid any money here either. All they're given literally is food and accommodation and 2 nights of sleep. So that's it's a pretty crummy way of looking at it. And then then they were comparing the food at the various workhouses, and some don't even get a spoon. It's like great. So break stones, pick oakum, or scrub, stuff like that. And then this part where... now, where was it? But suppose after you've had your night's sleep, you refuse to pick oakum or break stones or do any work at all? No fear you'll refuse a second time. They'll run you in. Run you in means to get you arrested, is a short answer. And you wouldn't advise you to try it on, my lad. So basically you either do work or you get arrested, which is kind of like dehumanizing, I think. Let me just move that around. But this is the whole thing of the British system. It was kind of, in a way, meant to dehumanize. It wouldn't say meant, but it certainly certainly perpetuated that dehumanizing aspect. So now I'll continue on with the book. 3, 2, 1. Three working girls came along, and one looked pityingly at me. As she passed, I followed her with my eyes, and she still looked pityingly back at me. The old men she did not notice. Dear Christ, she pitied me, young and vigorous and strong. But she had no pity for the two old men who stood by my side. She was a young woman, and I was a young man, and what vague sex promptings impelled her to pity me put her sentiment on the lowest plane. Pity for old men is an altruistic feeling, and besides, the workhouse door is the accustomed place for old men. So she showed no pity for them, only for me, who deserved at least, or not at all. Not in honour do grey hairs go down to the grave in London town. On one side the door was a bell handle, on the other side a press button. "Ring the bell," the carter said to me. And just as I ordinarily would at anybody's door, I pulled the handle and rang a pedal. "Oh, oh!" they cried in one terrified voice. "Not so hard!" I let go, and they looked reproachfully at me, as though I had imperiled their chance for a bed and 3 parts of skilly. Nobody came. Luckily it was the wrong bell, and I felt better. "Press a button," I said to the carpenter. "No, wait a bit," the carter hurriedly interposed. From all which I drew the conclusion that a poorhouse porter, who commonly draws a yearly salary of from £7 to £9, is a very finicky and important personage, and cannot be treated too fastidiously by paupers. So we waited 10 times a decent interval, when the carter stealthily advanced a timid forefinger to the button, and gave it the faintest, shortest possible push. I have looked at waiting men where life or death was in the issue, but anxious suspense showed less plainly on their faces than it showed on the faces of these 2 men as they waited on the coming of the porter. He came. He barely looked at us. "Full up," he said, and shut the door. "Another night of it," groaned the carpenter. In the dim light, the carter looked wan and grey. Indiscriminate charity is vicious, say the professional philanthropists. Well, I resolved to be vicious. "Come on, get your knife out and come here," I said to the carter, drawing him into a dark alley. He glared at me in a frightened manner, and tried to draw back. Possibly he took me for a latter-day Jack the Ripper, with a penchant for elderly male paupers, or he may have thought I was inveigling him into the commission of some desperate crime. Anyway, he was frightened. It will be remembered at the outset that I sewed a pound inside my stoker's singlet under the armpit. This was my emergency fund, and I was now called upon to use it for the first time. Not until I'd gone through the acts of a contortionist and shown the round coin sewed in did I succeed in getting the carter's help. Even then his hand was trembling so that I was afraid he would cut me instead of the stitches. Then I was forced to take the knife away and do it myself. Out rolled the gold piece, a fortune in their hungry eyes, and away we stampeded for the nearest coffee house. Of course, I had to explain to them that I was merely an investigator, a social student, seeking to find out how the other half lived. And at once they shut up like clams. I was not of their kind. My speech had changed. The tones of my voice were different. In short, I was a superior, and they were superbly class-conscious. "What will you have?" I asked as the waiter came for the order. "2 slices and a cup of tea," meekly said the carpenter. "2 slices and a cup of tea," meekly said the carter. Stop a moment and consider the situation. Here were 2 men, invited by me into the coffee house. They had seen my gold piece, and they could understand that I was no pauper. One had eaten a halfpenny roll that day. The other had eaten nothing, and they called for 2 slices and a cup of tea. Each man had given a 2-penny order. 2 slices, by the way, means 2 slices of bread and butter. This was the same degraded humility that had characterized their attitude toward the poorhouse porter. But I wouldn't have it. Step by step, I increased their order. Eggs, rashers of bacon, more eggs, more bacon, more tea, more slices, and so forth. They denying wistfully all the while that they cared for anything more, and devouring it ravenously as fast as it arrived. "First cup of tea I had in a fortnight," said the carpenter. "Wonderful tea, that," said the carpenter. They each drank 2 pints of it, and I assure you that it was slops. It resembled tea less than lager beer resembles champagne. Nay, it was water bewitched, and did not resemble tea at all. It was curious, after the first shock, to notice the effect the food had on them. At first they were melancholy, and talked of the divers times they had contemplated suicide. The carter, not a week before, had stood on the bridge and looked at the water and pondered the question. Water, the carpenter insisted with heat, was a bad route. He for one knew would struggle. A bullet was handier, but how under the sun was he to get hold of a revolver? That was the rub. They grew more cheerful as the hot tea soaked in, and talked more about themselves. The carter had buried his wife and children, with the exception of one son who grew to manhood and helped him in his little business. Then the thing happened. The son, a man of 31, died of the smallpox. No sooner was this over than the father came down with a fever and went to hospital for 3 months. Then he was done for. He came out weak, debilitated. No strong young son to stand by him. His little business done glimmering, and not a farthing. The thing had happened and the game was up. No chance for an old man to start again. Friends all poor and unable to help. He had tried for work when they were putting up the stands for the first coronation parade. And I got fair sick of the answer, "No, no, no." It rang in my ears at night when I tried to sleep, always the same, "No, no, no." Only the past week had he answered an advertisement in Hackney, and on giving his age was told, "Oh, too old by far." The carpenter had been born in the army, where his father had served 22 years. Likewise, his 2 brothers had gone into the army, one troop sergeant major of the 7th Hussars, dying in India after the mutiny. The other, after 9 years under Roberts in the East, had been lost in Egypt. The carpenter had not gone into the army, so here he was, still on the planet. "But here, give me your hand," he said, ripping open his ragged shirt. "I'm fit for the anatomist, that's all. I'm wasting away, sir. Actually wasting away for want of food. Feel my ribs and you'll see." I put my hand under his shirt and felt. The skin was stretched like parchment over the bones, and the sensation produced was for all the world like running one's hand over a washboard. "7 years of bliss I had," he said. "A good missus and 3 bonny lasses, but they all died. Scarlet fever took the girls inside a fortnight." "After this, sir," said the carter, indicating the spread and desiring to turn the conversation into more cheerful channels. "After this, I won't be able to eat a workhouse breakfast in the morning." "Nor I," agreed the carpenter. And they fell to discussing belly delights and the fine dishes their respective wives had cooked in the old days. "I've gone 3 days and never broke my fast," said the carter. "And I 5. His companion added, turning gloomy with the memory of it. 5 days once, with nothing in my stomach but a bit of orange peel, and an outraged nature wouldn't stand for it, sir, and I near died. Sometimes, walking the streets at night, I've been that desperate, I made my mind up to win the horse or lose the saddle, you know what I mean, sir? Commit some big robbery. But when morning come, there I was, too weak from hunger and cold to arm a mouse." As their poor vitals warmed to the food, they began to expand and wax boastful, and to talk politics. I can only say that they talked politics as well as the average middle-class man, and a great deal better than some of the middle-class men I've heard. What surprised me was the hold they had on the world, its geography and peoples, and on recent and contemporaneous history. As I say, they were not fools, these 2 men. They were merely old and their children had undutifully failed to grow up and give them a place by the fire. One last incident as I bade them goodbye on the corner, happy with a couple of shillings in their pockets and the certain prospect of a bed for the night. Lighting a cigarette. I was about to throw away the burner match when the carpenter reached for it. I proffered him the box, but he said, "Never mind, won't waste it, sir." And while he lighted the cigarette I'd given him, the carpenter hurried with the filling of his pipe in order to have a go at the same match. "It's wrong to waste," said he. "Yes," I said, but I was thinking of the washboard ribs over which I had run my hand. Alright, so that ends chapter 8, The Carter and the Carpenter. So as you can see, it looks like sickness really decimated their families. Oh, my son is asleep. He's cute when he's asleep. Well, he's always cute, but he's cute when he's asleep. Yeah, so we can see that. So I'm just going to put a bookmark on that page. Otherwise, I'm going to. Oh, come on! Don't do this to me. Okay, the spike, and let me. Cool. Got myself got my bookmark in there. Good. So yeah, so we can see this. So we can see scarlet fever had taken away children. We see that military service had taken children. Smallpox had also decimated families. And I suppose this is the thing that an unsafe society is no society at all. If you're likely to die of preventable diseases, then come on, let's get with it and actually, So I'm just trying to collect my thoughts here after that, and it just makes me think of the COVID situation at the moment, where we have access to medical technology, we have access to medical information, but we prefer to now reasonable skepticism. I don't have a problem with reasonable skepticism, but what I do have a problem is with obstinacy and accusations of genocide and wanting to depopulate the earth and all that kind of stuff. And it's but it is just interesting listening to people like this who've gone through the lived experience of the failures of our government, and it does make you think. But anyway, I've been Damien, the Tall Friendly Atheist Dad, host of the Tall Friendly Atheist Dad podcast. If you want to find out more, head on over to anchor.fm/TFA Dad. Contact me on Twitter, twitter.com/TFAD pod. Contact me on Facebook, facebook.com/TFAD pod. Head on over to the website, www.tallfriendlyatheistdad.com. Jump onto the YouTube channel, go to YouTube and search for the Tall Friendly Atheist Dad podcast. And if you want us to financially support what I do, head on over to patreon.com/TFAD pod, where your donations will certainly help what I do. But in the meantime, I'll leave you with some Victim of Illusion. In the meantime, take care.
I am sure